everyone, this is Heather. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I have got 6 different techniques that you can do on your cards using stencils. And today I'm featuring stencils from Stencil Revolution, and I will include a link to their store in the description box down below. They make laser cut mylar stencils, and one of the coolest things is that they've got a really great selection of styles of stencils, but all of the different styles come in different sizes. So they make really large stencils for your wall and more medium sizes for home decor projects, and then they also make smaller stencils that are perfect for paper crafting. So a lot of the smaller stencils come in a 6x6 size, which most of the ones that I'm using today are the smallest size that they offer. So they're really great for your cards, for scrapbook pages, for mixed media, journaling planners, and things like that. So I have got 6 different ways that you can incorporate using stencils on your cards. So let's go ahead and get started. And this is not going to be a beginning to end project video. I'm going to show you how to do the different techniques with the stencils, and I've got a card sample for each of the techniques that I'm going to show you. So first of all, I'm using the cloud stencil, which has a lot of great different shapes and sizes of clouds. And my finished project has the clouds on it, and I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. I hope that it does, but I have included some glitter on the clouds. So I'm going to show you how I did that. So for a lot of the techniques today, I like to work on a scrap piece of paper because I'm messy and clumsy, so I end up getting ink all over my work surface and my hands and stuff if I don't have something down to protect it. But if you have like a craft mat or anything like that, a surface that you can wipe off, then that works for you, that's fine. But for me, I do a little bit better on a scratch piece of paper. So you're going to want some type of repositionable tape. So you can use washi tape, post-it tape. I also have some temporary tape, anything that's not going to pull your paper in any way. So I like to tape the paper that I'm working on down onto my scratch piece of paper, and I'm just rolling this washi tape over and putting a couple pieces on, and I'm going to adhere that down to my scrap piece of paper, and then also tape my stencil down as well. So that way I know nothing is going to shift when I'm working with it. The paper's not going to move, the stencil's not going to move, everything will be adhered down nicely so that nothing shifts. So you can put as little or as much as you would like. So I have taped my paper to my scratch paper and then the stencil on top just using washi tape. And for this first idea, I'm going to be using texture paste. So this is a paste from Ranger. It comes in clear and white. I've got the white here, and you can add color to it before you apply it, or also after it dries you can apply color as well. I wanted the clouds to be white on the card, and so I'm actually going to be adding some glitter to it instead of adding color, but that is a really nice thing that you can do with this. You can add color to it, so you can have whatever color texture paste that you'd like. You could mix in things like re-inkers or paint or anything like that that's kind of liquid that you can mix in with the texture paste. So I've just got a little kind of trowel plastic spatula tool that you can pick up at the craft store. And we're going to liberally apply the paste with this tool. And I only want to do the top 4 of the clouds. So just so that I don't mess up and get anything down where I don't want it, I'm going to use a post-it note to kind of mask off what I don't want to have paste on. So you're just going to, I guess like icing a cake. I haven't really iced that many cakes in my life, but you want to put a liberal amount and make sure that all the areas are being covered. If you go off, that's okay. That's what the scratch paper's there for. And I want, for my clouds, I want some texture to them. Now, if you wanted them to be really smooth, you could take the edge of your palette knife and just scrape that excess off and put it right back in the container if you'd like. But I want my clouds to have a little bit of texture. So I'm not completely smoothing that out. I'm just spreading that out. Make sure that I've got all those little holes filled in there. Like that. And now when you're ready to see how to check to see how your project is looking, I would recommend just lifting up one part that you've taped down. Pull up your stencil and see how it looks. That way, if you're not happy, you need to add more product or ink or whatever you're doing, then it's a little bit easier to go ahead and place that back down without messing up what you've already done. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to remove the stencil. And my number one tip when working with stencils is go ahead and clean your stencil pretty much as soon as you're done using it with almost all products, because it will be so much easier to get a wet product off of your stencil than a dry product. Now, stencils are like stamps and any other tool that we use in crafting. They're gonna get dirty, they're gonna get stained, but they probably are gonna work a little bit better for you if you can get as much of the product off as possible. So especially with anything thick like this, we're using paint or whatever, you wanna go ahead and clean it off. So you can use baby wipes, Clorox wipes, water, whatever. These are good sturdy stencils. I've used them quite a few times, washed them and wiped them with a couple different things, and they're holding up just great. So, but you do want to go ahead and wash this off. And like I said, if you've got a lot of product, you could scrape it off and put it back in your container since it's clean and there's nothing else, on there. There's no color or anything. So biggest tip, wash these while they are still wet. And now that I've removed the stencil and my paper's still adhered to the scratch paper there, you can see I've got that pretty cloud texture. Put the lid back on that so it doesn't dry. And now I'm going to take an ultra fine glitter, and you could use colored glitter, chunky glitter. This is just kind of like a hollow ultra fine glitter, and I'm just going to get a little pinch in and just sprinkle a little bit of that glitter onto that texture paste. Use as much or as little as you like, and you want to make sure that you're doing this while it's wet so that that paste will grab hold of that glitter. I'm going to go ahead and remove this off of the paper. So hopefully you can see that that glitter's on there, and you're just going to tap off the excess. If you need to use a brush, and of course I've got it all over my hand, so I'll be pretty the rest of the day with glitter all over me. So as you can see, hopefully that texture paste has grabbed that glitter, and you can either set this aside to air dry, or if you have a heat gun that has a low setting, then you could also speed up the drying time on that with a heat tool. I wouldn't do it on high. You might end up kind of singeing the paste and making the paper warp just a little bit. So if you're impatient, you can do that, or otherwise you can just set it aside. It doesn't take very long to dry. So you can see in my finished card example here that I just made a nice little seam down below with hills and little houses and the hot air balloons. I think that a cloud stencil is kind of one of those must-have designs. There's so many different things that you can do with a cloud. Make scenes, you could do, kites and balloons and lots of different things. So I really think that a cloud stencil is just kind of one of those must-have designs. So this is my finished card. And now we'll go ahead and move on to the next technique. For this next technique, we're going to be using ink pads with the stencils. And I personally like to use an ink pad that has a slow drying time. So pigment inks, distress oxide, chalk inks. I like those because they're not going to dry really quickly. You have some time to sort of blend the colors in together and move them around. Dye-based inks work well as well, but I just find that anything that has a little bit of a slower drying time just kind of gives me a little bit of a better look. I would say that permanent inks like StazOn are maybe the only type of ink pads that you would want to avoid using with your stencils. They're just going to dry too quickly. So I'm using this beautiful hydrangea stencil, and I've gone ahead and taped the paper to my scratch paper and then taped the stencil down to the scratch paper as well. I made this really pretty Hawaiian card. So the inks that I'm using are Distress Oxide from Tim Holtz in Peeled Paint. And then I have two pigment inks, and these are the Radiant Neon, and this is Electric Yellow and Electric Pink. And I'm also wanted to show you some of the different types of applicators that you can apply your inks with. This is from the Tim Holtz line, and it is again from Ranger, and this is the sponge applicator that has the Velcro on it, and you can get sponges in different colors. Yeah, be careful, don't get all that on your fingers. And so you can get, like, these will wash out, all of these products will wash out of the different applicators, but I like to kind of get like one for my greens and one for my blues, etc. So then you've also got the sponge daubers that kind of fit on the end of your finger. These usually come like 3 in a pack. And then there's also a sponge dauber that has like a tall stick to it, and it has a smaller area. So this is really good for getting into smaller areas where you want less color. So again, I'm going to be using Post-it notes to kind of mask off some of the areas that I don't want to get color in. So I'm starting off with the leaves, and I'm using the sponge applicator from Tim Holtz. I'm just going to tap it on your ink pad and work in a swirling motion from the outside in, and continue to apply color until it's as dark or as light as you want. If you kind of want it a little bit heavier color around the edges, you can add a little bit more. Then I'm just going to move on and do the other leaves. So I have applied green to all of my leaves, and leaves aren't just, you know, one shade of green, and they have a little bit of a yellow tint to them. So I wanted to pull in a little bit of yellow with this Radiant Neon. So I'm taking the stick applicator with the little sponge on the end, and I'm going to blend in just a little bit of yellow kind of in the center of those leaves. So this is where this applicator comes in handy, because it's not very large and I can get that yellow into some of those smaller areas. And the inside of the flowers on hibiscus are sometimes also yellow. So I'm going to color in like the stamen and the little centers of those flowers with the same yellow. Just putting a little bit in the center. And I'm doing this kind of quickly at home. You can take your time. So I'm just applying that yellow color. And now I'm going to use the medium-sized sponge dauber and do the flowers, and I'm going to kind of mask off some of those green leaves, so again I don't get my colors too muddied up. And that's okay if they do you know, kind of bleed together a little bit. It's still going to look very pretty and natural. So just going along the edges so that I'm not covering up all of that yellow. And I'm going to finish these flowers and I'll be right back. So now I've added color everywhere that I would like. And here comes the fun part, because it looks like a big mess, but when you peel up your stencil, you will reveal what you've done. Like I said, if you want to lift it up and look and make sure that the color is exactly where you want it to be, if you need to go back in and fill in any spaces, lift up just part of it. And so there is our finished background piece. And again, here is the finished card. Just added this cute little hula girl, stamped right over the stencil with my words, and added a cute little toucan. Just that is such a pretty bright card. I really love the hibiscus stencil. I think it's a really great one. So for this next technique, I'm going to be adding a product called Fun Flock to this really cute kitty cat card using a paw print stencil. So you don't have to put your stencils directly onto cardstock. You can add them to pattern paper, any type of paper that you would like. Stenciling probably will work on it. So again, I hope you can see on camera, this has like a fuzzy flocked texture to it. And this is how the Fun Flock comes. It looks similar to an embossing powder container, but there is little bits of fuzz in there. And it comes in lots of different colors. And I'm going to be using a glue pad with this. So when you buy an essential glue pad, it will come with a re-inker, because these pads have a tendency, because it's glue, to dry really quickly. So before you do anything with your pad, you want to make sure that you've got plenty of ink, and especially for this technique, that your corners of your ink pad are good and inked up. So you just want to squeeze a little bit on the tube and kind of work it in. Just make sure that you've got plenty of product on that pad. So I'm going to be taking the ink pad and smearing it directly over the stencil. So I've taped the pattern paper to my scratch paper, put the stencil down, and then because I put the stencil over a little bit of an angle, some of the paper, pattern paper is sort of showing. So I've just laid a post-it note here, because again, I'm messy and clumsy, and I know I would eventually get some glue onto the pattern paper, which is what I don't want. So I'm just going to be taking my ink pad and applying that glue to the paw prints. You could also probably use a glue stick for this. I haven't tried it, but so I'm just kind of pressing, especially the corners of that in, and then sort of tip it up to the light and see if you've got a lot of glue that's gone through the actual open area of the stencil. And then with the Fun Flock, again, we're just going to take a little pinch and we're going to sprinkle it over. Sorry for my arm in the way, I'm a lefty. I'm going to sprinkle that on top and take our finger and tap it down. So just work your way down across, and if you need to stop and add some more glue, you can, but be very careful that you don't accidentally get powder onto your glue pad. So keep it far away or put the lid on, because if you get this flocking powder on there, it's probably not going to come off. So I feel like I've got a good amount tapped onto there, and I'm going to bring just an embossing tray over and kind of shake off some of that excess. And we're gonna lift up our stencil and see how it looks. And that looks great. I'll move that. And so when I was playing around with this, I found, again, clean this off very quickly, because you've now put glue onto your stencil. And I found like a Clorox wipe or a baby wipe was the best solution for getting this off. So again, before it dries, wipe that down. And let me remove the paw print paper from my scratch paper. And if you have any excess on there, you can kind of tap it off. And so now I have these fun paw prints that are fuzzy. And you want to give the glue just a little bit of time to dry. It doesn't take very long. I'll go back to the finished project, and I just added a sentiment and that says wishing you a pawsome day, which I thought was perfect with the paw prints. And then just a little kitty cat with the can of tuna and a candle in it. So this is perfect for a birthday for somebody who loves cats. So moving on to our fourth technique, I'm again going to be using ink pads, but this time I'm going to be using a stipple brush. And this gives you a little bit more of a kind of rustic, distressed look than using a sponge or foam tool. So I made this adorable little small gift card using the honeycomb stencil. And again, I've taped it to my scrap paper, tape down the stencil, and I'm going to be using two different inks, and this time I am using a dye-based ink because I don't really need the ink to move around or blend too much. And this is Honey from Close to My Heart, and this is Vintage Photo Distress ink. And so I'm going to start off with the honey, and the paper that I'm using already has a bit of kind of like a wash distressed look to it, and so this tone on tone really kind of helps you build up color without having to work on starting off with a completely white surface. So just going to pick up some color on the brush, and I've only got one of these brushes, so I'm just going to be working from light to dark as far as colors go. And I'm just going to kind of, again, sort of swirl around. I don't want to cover the entire piece of paper, kind of just want to go around where the stencil itself is so that I get some depth and dimension. So I'm just tapping that on there. You can also do a stippling motion. I feel that you get a little bit more coverage if you go in with kind of a swirling motion. So I'm going to lay down some of this yellow and be right back. So it might be a little hard to tell, but I have added yellow all the way around all of the different lines that are cut with the stencil. And I'm going to go in with this Distress Photo Brown and add just a little bit more depth and dimension with this color. And you can hopefully see how the bristles add just a little bit more texture. So it's just a little bit more of a rustic look. And same thing, I'm just going to kind of follow the cut lines of the stencil. And again, lift up your stencil, see if you like what you see. If not, go back and add some more color. We'll go ahead and remove the stencil and take the paper off the scrap sheet. And so now you can see I've got that really pretty background of the honeycomb. I just think that is so cool. So starting off with a color that's similar to what you already want and adding that sort of tone on tone with the different honey colors, and then just a little bit of brown. And back on the sample card, you can see how that makes such a great background. So for my next technique, I'm going to be using the stencil with some markers. And this kind of gives it a little bit of a hand-drawn look. I am not an artist and not very good with hand drawing, but using a stencil, especially one that's kind of got a simpler design, something that's not too detailed or complex, you can use your markers and fill in the image. And that is what I have done with the branch here for this really cute holiday card, the little owl and the ornament hanging from the tree branch. And this stencil from Stencil Revolution actually has 3 different branches on it. So there's a lot that you could do. You could do like an entire wreath shape. You could, set other little things. I love fairies. I thought a fairy would be really cute sitting in the branches. This one kind of looks more fall. This one's sort of winter and spring and summer. So I really liked this one that has the 3 different stencil designs. You could use any of your alcohol-based markers, water-based. You could even use permanent markers. Keep in mind, again, like I said, you're probably going to get a little bit of staining. It's not going to affect the way that the stencil works. So I've taped, this time I don't really need a scratch piece of paper, so I've just taped the stencil onto my piece of white cardstock, and I'm using the bullet tip of my brown marker, and I'm just going to follow the lines of the stencil and just color that in with the brown. So I'm just doing the branches like that. Now I'm going to take a red marker and again with a bullet tip, and I'm just gonna trace those circles in there around so I can have some little berries on my branch. This is really quick and easy and a great way to add multiple colors with your stencil. So this one's real fast, real quick, but just a great way to add a little bit of a kind of hand-drawn look. So again, here's the sample card. I just put the little owl on the branch and a sentiment for Christmas. So for this last technique, I have saved the messiest for the last, and that is by using ink sprays. Lots of companies make ink sprays, and they are perfect to use with stencils, but they can get pretty messy. The first thing that you want to do is make sure that you shake your bottle really, really well so that you've distributed all the product inside before you spray. So I'm going to use this really cool arrow stencil, and I'm just going to be using 4 of them. So I'm going to line up the stencil on my paper, and I've cut it just a little bit larger than those arrows. I'm going to turn it over and put some washi tape on the back, taping that to the stencil and flipping it over. And I like to work in a cardboard box or something like that because the ink sprays will just go everywhere, and I end up getting them on everything. And you might even want to use gloves because, again, like me, if you're kind of messy, the ink sprays do tend to kind of get all over everything. So you want to either go outside or work in an enclosed space like a box so that you're not getting ink spray on everything. Okay, so I know this is going to be a little bit of an awkward angle, but I've just got a cardboard box here that I have laid a scratch piece of paper in and my stencil in the scratch paper, and I'm just going to hold up the spray bottle. It's probably going to be off camera high, and just give it some good pumps of ink. So you can see now that that ink is on everything. So you really carefully want to lift it off. And again, it can either air dry or you can hit it with your heat tool on low. I also, just to give it a little bit more texture, after I removed the stencil, I just did another couple of spritzes on the paper. So let's go back to the sample, and I thought this was a good masculine card for a man with the arrows in the back, and I put a little bear on there and it says have a very good birthday. So that is our last technique. I'm going to show you one more time all the different cards that we made. So this is the cloud card that I made using texture paste and glitter, and then we used ink pads and sponge and foam daubers with this hibiscus for this really pretty hula girl card. We used glue pad and fun flocking for this sweet little kitty cat card. Then we did a texture kind of tone on tone with a stipple brush using ink pads in a yellow and a brown and this really cool honeycomb stencil. Then markers for the branch on this sweet owl card. And then last but not least, we used an ink spray for a masculine birthday card. So I know this is a long video. If you stuck with me to the end, I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that you learned something new and are encouraged to add some stencils to your next card. There's so many things that you can do with them. They're so much fun. Again, all the stencils used in this video were from Stencil Revolution, and I've got a link in the box below to their store. And I really appreciate you joining me today. I hope you had a good time. I had a great time sharing these techniques with you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and check out my channel and subscribe so you can see more of my upcoming videos. I hope you have a wonderful day. This is Heather. Thank you. Bye.